Every agency needs to take on new clients, but every client is different, and it's almost impossible to know how a client relationship will work out over the long run, especially when you're just meeting them for the first time. Good, healthy client relationships can be the backbone of a strong and sustainable business, and they can be crucial to your ongoing success. But bad client relationships can be incredibly damaging, causing you stress, demotivating your team, and in the worst cases, they could cost you financially too. In this video, I'm going to share 5 things to look for when you're meeting a new client. Hi, thanks for joining. If you're new to this channel, I'm Rich Dean, a web designer and developer, former web agency owner, and author of the book series Start, Grow and Sell Your Web Design Agency. My goal is to help anyone looking to start, grow and sell an agency to save time, earn more money, avoid the common mistakes and pitfalls, and build a thriving and valuable business. Okay, so on to the main topic, starting with number 1, how long have they been trading? Every business needs to start somewhere. So just because someone is just starting out on their business journey, it doesn't mean you shouldn't work with them. But there are certain factors that mean that startups or businesses with very little trading history can carry a higher level of risk than those that have been trading for some time. The first is funding. Unless they're flush with investor cash or they've built up some other kind of pot to get their business off the ground, startups don't tend to have the biggest budgets. Then there's expectation. New business owners can often lack experience, which isn't a bad thing, but it does mean they may have unrealistic expectations about what's possible, especially within their budgets. But the most important factor is their trading history itself, or rather the lack of it. Without any trading history, you'll have no way of knowing how they've conducted themselves in the past, and therefore how likely it is they will be reliable or trustworthy in the future. That doesn't mean you shouldn't work with them, but it is something that you should factor into your decision making. Perhaps the client has run other businesses in the past, in which case you should be able to look them up on something like Companies House and get an idea of how those other businesses panned out. Number 2, how is their business set up? How a business is structured can make a big difference in terms of how stable it is and how committed the business owners are, and therefore how much you can trust them. There's a big difference between an established business, perhaps a limited company that has many of the other telltale signs of being established, versus someone who's perhaps just operating with a mobile phone or with a free email account. The trick is to know what those signs are. Are they set up with a proper business structure, like a limited company? Do they have a dedicated landline business telephone number? Do they have a proper domain, website and business email address? Are they VAT registered? Do they have a proper business address and do they operate from a proper office? Do they have staff? Do they have any other accreditations that are relevant to their industry? Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that a client that doesn't have any of these things can't be trusted or that you shouldn't work with them. Far from it. As I said earlier, every business needs to start somewhere, and not all clients will have all of these. But I know that if it were me, and if I was weighing up whether to work with a new client, I would be more inclined to work with one that did have these things versus one that didn't. And as a side note, this works both ways. If you want your web design agency to be perceived as being more established and trustworthy, you may want to invest in these things too. Number 3, do they object to your payment terms? Okay, before we get to this one, I need to ask you a really big favour. We're a fairly new channel, so it would really help us if you could like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and also share this content with anyone else you think could benefit from it. It takes a lot of time to make these videos, so this will really help YouTube to recognise our content, and it will mean we can carry on making helpful videos just like this. Okay, thank you, and back into it. So if you've done the hard work in terms of making sure your agency is competitive and charges a fair market rate while also ensuring you're profitable, then a good client should have no objection to your fees or your payment terms. In fact, a good client would usually have done their research, got on prices from multiple agencies so they know what their new website should cost, and then have already allocated a budget for the project ahead of time. In other words, a good client should have the money ready for the project before it even begins. So when it comes to actually commencing the work, you would usually agree payment terms with the client up front, usually split payments, and then payment for them should just be a formality. That doesn't mean that clients won't still be cautious about parting with thousands of pounds, but if you find that a new client objects or aggressively questions you about your payment terms, or they pressure you to defer payment to the end of the project, then that could be a red flag. It could mean that they don't actually have the money to pay for the project, or they want to avoid paying you entirely. Fortunately, this isn't very common, but it is something to be aware of. Number 4, do they complain about other agencies? So websites aren't a new thing anymore. The web design industry has been around since the mid-90s, so it's more than likely that most of the clients you meet will have had at least some experience with previous web design agencies. And those experiences may not have always gone well either, so it's not unreasonable for a client to come to you after having had a bad experience with another agency. However, unless they were incredibly unlucky, it's highly unlikely they would have had bad experiences with multiple agencies, and especially extremely bad experiences. So if you meet a new client who is highly critical of all the other agencies they worked with, then perhaps treat that as a red flag, as chances are the issues were probably more likely down to that client rather than those other agencies. Number 5, do they have unrealistic expectations? So, as well as the points we've already looked at, for some clients, there will just be a disconnect between what they're looking for versus what's possible or what they can afford. Now, that doesn't always mean they will end up being a bad client. Some clients just need educating as to what's possible and what will be involved, again, especially if they're just starting out. But if the disconnect is too great and what they're asking for just isn't within your capabilities or their budget, then that could be a red flag. Only you can decide this though, as what you define as unrealistic may not be the same for someone else. But this is also why taking the time to get a proper brief understanding of client requirements is so important. But just remember, you're not obliged to take on clients. So with all of this, if something just doesn't feel right, don't be afraid to walk away. There will always be plenty of good clients out there. Okay, so hopefully you found this video useful. If you've enjoyed it, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you'd like more tips and insights for how to grow your business, check out my book series, Start, Grow and Sell Your Web Design Agency, which you can buy from Amazon now, and I'll share a link in the description below. And if you'd like to watch even more informative content, then why not check out this video here. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.